Thanks for joining us. This is Live with Miami's Community News, and I'm Michael Miller. Our guest today is John Schultz from OG Paint. Welcome, and thank you very much for being here.
Thank you for having me, Michael.
All right. So OG Paint, family business for a long time. All right. First, let's try to tell our viewers a little bit about where your two stores are, more or less. All right. And it's on Bird Road and 69th Avenue.
69th Avenue. We're next door to 80 Barnes Park.
All right. And which, by the way, that's Eco Venture Park. I know about that now. You can go there and you can see the animal ambassadors, all right, over the summer. OG Paint's been a family business for how long?
OG Paint was started in the 50s. My mother worked there from the 60s and finally purchased it in 1981. So that puts us now at our 40-year mark.
You know, and in today's environment, to have a business that's 40 and 50 and 60 years old, it is a big deal for that to happen when you think about it, with all the changes that are going on.
There's a lot of people that don't stay in any particular business for any length of time, and it's, you know, but it's something that we have a passion for, I guess. You know, we really enjoy the challenges and the ability to be our own boss.
Yes.
You know, as opposed to being somebody who's working underneath a boss at a paint department in some store.
Yes.
And it's brought us a great amount of knowledge and ability to reach out and try to help people, I think.
So, and with all the places that people can buy paint, all right, why should somebody buy paint from your locally owned store?
At OG Paint, we have hundreds of years of experience between all of us. Most of our employees have been there in excess of 5 years. I've been working there since I was in middle school, essentially. So you just keep going, you know, and as you go, things change and you learn new things. I'm not somebody who's just come in for my day job and go off with my day job and that kind of thing. I've had, you know, years and years and years of training through the wallpaper people and through the paint departments and through the equipment manufacturers and other things like that. So I can bring a lot of experience to something that most people wouldn't get if they walked into a box store, let's say.
So you do business with painters and a lot with homeowners and commercial property owners, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I would say we don't even know where the break is, but I would say it's probably 50% painters and 50% homeowners. There may be more contractors than that because we do service like wood shops and things like that with their coating needs.
So as an inexperienced painter, all right, the times that I've walked in your store, I just talked with your guys there. I said, this is what we're trying to get done. They asked me a whole bunch of questions and arrive at the right paint at the right time and how to prepare it. The confidence that I had of getting the right products when I walked out was super, all right? And I've gone to other places where I'm going, that kid doesn't know, all right? And I just bought this stuff, and I'm afraid it's not going to work.
Or I've had all kinds of stories where they walked into a different place and the guy's like, oh, just look at the webpage. Just read it up on Google, you know, or something like that. Yeah. Or, you know, you can learn it all from YouTube. And there's a lot of information there, but you can't learn it all.
So for a homeowner, they get their house painted no matter who does it. How long does that paint last until you go, I think we need to start touching it up a little bit?
Well, that's a difficult question to answer because it all depends on A, the preparation that's done, and B, the quality of the paint they put on top. Now, in our instance, I'm not looking to sell cheap paint, to tell you the truth. And I don't see any reason to go into that because I want to be able to sleep at night knowing the customer that walks out the door has the product they need for the job that they want to do. And you can't do that with inexpensive products. The other thing is the fact that, I'm sorry, where were we?
That's all right. So when I went over, the gentleman said, if you'd like, Michael, I can go to your house, I can look at it and tell you how much paint you're going to need. You still do
that? Yeah, we can do some estimating. I've done that many times. We just worked with the Arc Center, which is off of like Kendall and 107th, 16th Avenue. And there we're repainting some portables, and Sarah asked me to go out there to take a look at it. I measured it. We got them just the right amount of paint and products. They had volunteers
When
to do their job.
when I heard that, it was so comforting, right? That I wasn't going to overbuy or underbuy, all right? Because nothing's worse than you go, "Oh, I got to go back to the store and get another 3 gallons or another 5 gallons." I think it's terrible, all right, for us to have to experience that, considering that we think that we're good weekend warrior painters. So, so you mentioned the paint. It's not just the quality of the paint, right? It's the preparation. A lot of people say, "Well, I'm just going to paint over this unprepared wall."
Oh
Right?
yeah, absolutely.
And what happens if you just paint over an unprepared wall?
Well, you take a risk. There's lots of stuff that goes on, and when people walk in and I say, "Hey, listen, you should wash the wall down," and I've seen people just balk at that. I don't want to wash the wall. It looks perfectly fine. But by washing the wall, there is dust that's on that surface. It's going to get whipped up into the paint, and it's going to present itself as the paint dries. There's dust on top of the baseboards. There's a halo of dirt around the doors where the paint's not going to stick because it's greasy there. There's a lot of reasons for it, and you're inspecting the wall to make sure that it's going to be in good shape.
Before we get on to the fine paints of Europe, which you're going to show us in a few minutes, my big question of the day is, now that it's raining all the time, I see in particular our sidewalk, which I'm going to show you afterwards, right? I noticed that sometimes it's a little slippery. So we want to put something on that sidewalk. What are the different types of products that are out there so it's not as slippery?
Well, anything that gets wet is going to be slippery. That's just kind of the way it is. But in order to reduce the slippery aspect of it, we suggest that you put in some sort of aggregate. So essentially, we have graded sands, so they're all about the same size, not clumpy or anything, and that can be sprinkled into the finish before it dries, or you can mix it into the paint and then apply it that way. And there are other paints that do have those non-slips.
So does
built
the
in.
consumer actually put in the paint, or put in the sand, or do you do that?
Normally we ask them to do it because you have a full gallon of product and you're going to dump in another pint size of sand, it's going to overflow. So they're going to have to find a different bucket to do it in. And if, we have buckets, if we're lucky with the supply chain issues, that we can put those into, and we can shake them up if you want. But it's just easier to do it at home.
Yeah, and that's getting more and more common, I think, as lawsuits are coming, hitting us all the time with that.
But there's a trade-off though, because if it's rough, then it's difficult to keep it looking clean.
Because of the little bumps that are in there.
Well, because the void's between the bumps.
So that's a trade-off.
Yeah, so dirt collects in there, and you can't sweep it. You can't you can sweep it, but stuff collects in the pockets. Or if you try to mop it, it shreds your mop, that kind of thing.
So whoever thought about that side? Let's talk about these. Let's talk about these fine paints of Europe that you have right there.
Okay, I would say about 10 years ago, the Fine Paints of Europe people came to me and said, "John, you need to buy our paint." And I said, "I'm not sure about that." So they sent me a bunch of samples, and I looked at them and I tried them, and I thought, well, this is nothing that I want to put in the store. A few years ago at this point, they came back to us and said, "John, you need to buy Fine Paints of Europe." And I said, well, let's go through this again. Why do we need to do this? And I was presented a lot of information. I was also presented their new products, which are phenomenal. Once you start to compare them to other normal paints or inexpensive paints you might find at the box stores, they really do an amazing job in comparison.
And there is a difference. Sometimes you don't even have to be trained to see that, because when you go around and you look and you say, this paint looks better than the other one, what are some of the things that people should look for besides pricing in a paint?
Well, things that make a difference in paint. Paint's made up essentially of 4 different things. It's resins, which are the binder that glue everything together. The pigments, which are the color you get. It has solvent, which evaporates and goes away, like water or mineral spirits. And then there's some additives they put in there to modify the way the paints work. But as far as that goes, paints have a particular appearance. They have scrubbability so that the paint will stay on the wall. They have just durability. And we like to think that paints are one of those items that you don't measure it by the price of the can, because to fully understand the value of the product, it has to be figured in at an annualized basis. Okay, if you buy something and it wears out in a year and it costs you $20 versus something that's wears out in 10 years, it costs you $100. You go, well, it still costs more, but you don't factor in that labor that you got to redo it all over and all over and all over. So there's a big difference that way.
So I've been involved with exotic birds for most of my life. And so sometimes, and we sell to pet stores, sometimes an end consumer doesn't like the price of the purchase the bird sit on. They say, well, I got this really cheap one. And I go, well, when you put that really cheap perch in there, that bird is going to eat it, right? In a very short period of time.
Yeah.
So even though it's half the price, it's gonna fall apart very, very quickly. So not only will the bird be unhappy, you're gonna be unhappy, and you're gonna be mad at the person that sold it to you. So with painting, we obviously want things to look good. Now, this is a one coat paint right here.
Well, I wouldn't necessarily call it a one coat paint, but it is one coat of paint.
Okay.
It's a dark blue paint and it's on a white primer in one coat. And it's, for all intents and purposes, it's a solid finish right now, you know. And typically, any of our other paints that we tried to match, that's actually a Benjamin Moore blue that we matched up as a comparison. So
yes,
because we had the chip, you know, you would have to 2 or 3 coats, maybe 4 coats to get to that point. So how much labor is that to put it on?
Yes, and a point well made. So with paints, should we, as consumers of this, just assume if we're painting our house or a bedroom in the house that one coat without regard to the quality of the paint, we're going to need 2 coats? Should we just factor that in?
My recommendation to everybody is factor in 2 coats. I mean, you might get away with one. It's difficult to get away with one most of the time because as people are rolling it on or brushing it on, you're removing some paint as well as putting it on, as opposed to like the guys who do spray jobs where you spray it on and everything that comes out of the gun is on the wall and stays there. You don't remove it by the applicator.
Oh,
but 2 coats does a couple of different things for you. If you look at a single coat of paint, and even if you look at this one closely, you'll see that there's pinholes in it. So there's little tiny areas where moisture and other things can get past that paint. By putting on 2 coats, you minimize those, so you have a more solid film. And you know, it's interesting. I drive around and I look at walls because that's what I do. And if you go through any of the warehouse districts, you can always see where there's 2 coats of paint because the bottom of the warehouse is black and the top of the warehouse is black. And the middle is clean because that's where they overlapped when they rolled the top and the bottom. And, you know, if there's ever a good, quick way to see the value of 2 coats, it's right there.
Yes. And I think as we get older, we start recognizing that it may cost you a little bit more here, but the reality is if it lasts another 6 months or another year, it's there. And not just to last, but to look good during that time. And I think that's what a lot of people want. They want it to look good. They want it to smell good for at least for a little while, right? So let's go back to some of these other paints you have from the fine paints of Europe.
Okay. Well, once again, back in 1987, a fellow by the name of John Leahy Jr. was looking to get the best paints he could possibly find. And he found a Dutch manufacturer. The Dutch are renowned for the best paints, starting all the way, 400 or 500 years ago, maybe 600 years ago when they were doing fine paints and things like that, pictures. And, you know, you can go find a Dutch master paint, and the paints that they painted with back then still look pretty good. You know, it's amazing. It's amazing when you see something like the Mona Lisa and you realize that thing's 500 years old and it looks great. You know, if you painted your walls with most of our interior paints, in 500 years, they wouldn't look that good. So you want something that's going to last. These people wanted something that was going to last. The Dutch people, Mr. Leahy, who brought these materials in, wanted something that would last. And it's a whole different mindset over there as what paint's about. With some of our paints, there's 7 grades of paint from like their very cheapest to their very best. And they're all trying to fit into a certain price point or compete in a different market. And there's room for those. Those are absolutely fine. But with something like this is for those who want something that's exceptionally good. And it's not, in my opinion, it's not for everywhere, although I've seen places, entire apartments and homes that are painted with it. And they're just fantastic.
Yes.
I mean, the feel of the paint, the richness of the paint is beyond what you would get out of a standard can of paint from even my stores.
When I've been over to your store, it's probably over there 6 months ago. You have the ground floor, and then you have upstairs,
Yes.
and you have other products other than paint. Can you tell us about some of those things?
Upstairs, we have our wallpaper section. We have over 400 different books, and they all have, multiple patterns in them, obviously. We do keep a little bit of in-stock wallpaper for those people who need to get a job done right now, but they go everything from textures, naturals, silks, to just exquisite sort of vinyls and prints from a lot of the decorator designer manufacturers.
And when I went over there and we were trying to match up some paint, they were able to look in my old records and to find it. All right. And then I said, listen, I know I got that, but would you give me a little sample? Give me a little sample and match up perfectly. And that's really for the hobbyist, all right, that likes to venture out and do that. It's really great to where there's a history of what you buy and you can have confidence in the paint and with the staff that's there. So, and the last time I was there, also I saw a lot of professionals that are there. Do they also get some of their tools that they need? Any machines?
We have a lot of different things, anything that you need for doing a paint job, essentially. So we do have pressure cleaners that we sell. We have paint sprayers and spray guns for compressor type units. We also sell a line of preparation tools from a German company called Festool, and they make dustless sanders that are just absolutely out of this world.
And when I was over there, I was listening to the jargon of the painters, and they really seem to enjoy what they do and to be able to relate locally to that. And again, so you're on Bird and 69th Avenue, right there, right next to near the railroad tracks, right?
Used to be railroad tracks. We're going to be next to Ludlam Trail at some point.
I noticed across the street from you on the south side, there's a few apartments that went up over there.
Yeah, yeah.
A few.
It used to be the old Amera lumber land there, and they went away, and now
Yes.
it's 900 apartment units.
I was wondering how many. It's pretty significant, and it goes on the trail and goes south. Right, It's there. So right now, a lot of people are having an experience where they're getting moisture from the outside of their house into their house. All right, through the brick. All right.
Well,
what is that? Apparently through the brick.
Apparently, well, through the walls, anyways. Yep. Generally, when people have asked me about those kinds of things, the problem really, most of the time, is that there's a crack somewhere. It's generally not filtering through the paint. I have seen instances where the paint's just completely worn out. And you'll know it too if you have this on your house where you hit it with a hose and the water absorbs into the paint and it discolors for a while and then it dries up and it's all uniform again. So in those instances, it could be filtering through the paint.
I had the distinct pleasure in understanding how bleach can ruin your paint job. All right. It was really very clever. There was some mold. It was on that particular side of the house. It said, oh, well, I'll clean it off. It did. Cleaned off everything. First it turned orange and then it just ripped off all the paint. So
Sorry to hear
well,
that.
of course.
That's maddening.
So there's lots of things that we think that we know what we're doing, but we don't. So what are some things that a homeowner who's considering painting his house, what are some of the cues other than it's dirty that it's time to do this? Where should he be looking to see how that paint is standing?
Well, once again, I think the paints are good enough nowadays that most people would probably want to change color before they need to repaint.
Mm-hmm.
With some of our paints, I know people have come in and they're like, oh, it's been 20 years. I finally have to repaint, that kind of thing. But certain things like a fading, fading is inevitable. It's going to happen with everything. There's a tremendous amount of sun that's outside and it's really dangerous as far as our skin as well as the paint itself. So that will happen. There's, once again, as the paint wears out or mold and mildew grows on that surface, you want to definitely take care of those situations.
And in preparation coming over, I was looking through the building. I'm going, oh, all of a sudden I started noticing where we have a vinyl floor. I noticed that the baseboard where we've been mopping it, there's this 1 inch gap all the way around to where it's sort of the mop, every day is taking away a little bit of that. And I realized, oh, all I had to do was pay attention. Didn't start today or yesterday.
Right.
It'd been this gradual thing. So he said, okay, so it's time to do that. So lots of times when in a commercial setting, when we do that, just got to know if you're cleaning up close, you're cleaning the wall too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the weed eater men will do that to your walls as well outside.
So yes, I'm glad you brought that up. So the solution to that is what, to have bushes so they're not hitting the wall at the same time?
Well, I wouldn't necessarily suggest bushes. When I bought into my house, they had rock that went around, and I thought that was a great solution. Of course, the grass grows up over the rock, and you deal with it.
Nature's amazing.
Yeah, there's no stopping. But I thought that was absolutely the best solution, because the water that came off the roof just went straight into the ground. It didn't splash onto the walls, that kind of thing, and it made just a beautiful perimeter. Bushes are a problem because they will trap moisture back there, and generally, if you look behind bushes, on anybody who puts the bushes too close to the house, it's a green zone. It's just filth.
Wow. All right. Call the nursery guy. Tell him not to bring over the
Trim
plant.
it back a foot or two, That's all. Because it's just, and that's bad. I mean, the organisms, the algae and the molds and the fungi and all that stuff that's back there is eating into your walls and into your paint, and it's very difficult to control, because it stays damp all the time. It just traps that moisture. And moisture's our enemy in the paint world.
So here we have, August almost around the corner. Is there a particular time of the year that people are more apt to attend to their homes as far as painting?
Well, our busiest season, I would say, would be towards the end of the year before the holiday season, because most people are getting their homes ready to go for visitors and as a present to the house. They've come back from holiday vacation and it's not quite so hot anymore, and they can go outside and work without being just overwhelmed with the heat. So a lot of times it's just September, October, November are our busiest seasons. And you're coming off of hurricane season and it's not quite so rainy, and so it just makes a better opportunity.
So I wonder how often somebody says, gee, I think it's time to paint the house, and they wind up putting in the new carpet, furniture.
All the time.
Yes, that's just the way that works.
Although I would recommend that you do that stuff first before you paint, because if you come to a paint store, you can get tens of thousands of colors and all the shades in between, versus if you go once again with the wallpaper or fabrics, curtains, that kind of thing, you're going to be the one you want, the one that's back ordered, and the one they have in stock. And you're going to go with the one they have in stock because most people need it right now. And it may not be the color that you will complement your walls with if you paint first.
Yes.
Okay. So if you come in later and say, hey, I have this color curtain or upholstery, then we can coordinate with that. But we've had a lot of people come in and say, oh, I'm getting into a new apartment. And you're like, great. What fabrics are you going to use? What's your furniture like? Because if you have certain type of furniture, certain colors go good with that versus not, or what they're trying to do as far as their decor. And they're, oh, it's just white. We just want to paint it before we move everything in. And then it's like, that's backwards.
So let's talk a little bit. You have a pretty active website, and is it at ogpaint.com?
We have, the ogpaint.com is like a landing site for us. It's essentially a WordPress blog.
Yep.
And I don't get on it as much as I need to, but we do have a sales e-commerce site and it's go.ogpaint.com.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a hyphen between the O and the G.
So people can go and they can look around a little bit more, sort of get a feel for the colors. And again, you have two locations, both one on Bird, one right around the corner from there.
If you want to look at colors, I would recommend you go to Benjamin Moore's website. Mm-hmm. They have their personal color viewer where you can actually work on a program on the cloud. You can import your pictures and then define the areas that you want to put colors up, and then you can play with that. They also have a bunch of ready to go rooms that you can cast colors up onto.
Amazing, John, the differences in how we do business and how we select things compared to 20 years ago. You would have to go do certain things. Now there's plenty of options for
But
people.
even with all those computer kind of options, we still recommend you come in and get a pint sample to put on the wall and test, because to me, that's the Denny's menu. You see that looks like a great Grand Slam, and what you may be getting on your plate may be different. Lighting, other things in the house that don't change. When I moved into my house, I thought, oh man, this is great. I'm just going to use the same color I had in the apartment. I love that color. Looked terrible.
Well, years ago, before our last paint job, we went and got some samples, and we did 4 different colors
Mm-hmm.
on the wall. This on the outside of the building, big stripes like this. And we said, honk 1, honk 2, honk 3. People would be driving by and honking their horn. It was
brilliant.
It was so much fun. All right, to do that. We recently, by the way, we've been talking to some muralists about doing some work on our building.
Nice.
And I've met with 3. We're going to select one and see what we can put together. It's really exciting to see so many options that are available, for people.
Talk to the signage people for Dade County, because
Yes.
they may or may not be happy with that.
So we're lucky here. We're in South Miami, so they give approval for that. But signs certainly need to get approval, because you put up a sign and you don't have a permit, you're going to get caught and you're going to have a problem.
Well, people who put up murals, if it looks like their business, the county's frowns down on that.
Yes.
So.
And there's certainly some criteria. Ours are going to be really sort of a free-flowing type of event.
Okay.
So anyway, Mike, congratulations to you on your family for being in business and thriving and helping literally thousands and thousands and thousands of people be happier with their homes and their businesses. So,
Well, we'd like to think that, we have the best products that we can find on the shelves, the things that are going to make a difference when you're painting your home.
that's great. So you love the paint business?
Yeah, absolutely.
And it is, tell us, if you would, why, when you got in it, did you look then and say, I think I'm going to do this for a whole long time? Or did you say, let me try it out? How did that work for you?
Well, as a family business, you're brought into the business. Okay. And actually, my mother would come home and she would complain the same complaints I make when I come home now. And I'm like, I'm not doing that. But, you need money for the day. So I would go in and stock shelves and scrape cans and do things that were needed around the store. And then I went off to college, and college was great. I really enjoyed it. I lived in Gainesville. I stayed after to pursue the vocation, but it didn't really pay, didn't really satisfy. You're kind of trapped in a thing there. And so I came back in 1988 and started up full time at that point, and it's just been all go since.
We have a lot of similarities in our family business, how that works. It says you just go that direction, and all of a sudden you look around, and then 35 years later you go, when did this happen? So again, we're going to wrap it up. Our guest today again is John Schultz from OG Paint. You can find him all over the internet or on Bird Road and 69th Avenue. So again, John, thank you so much for appreciating it. Folks, check out the paint there, and feel free to give John a call over there at OG Paint. I want to thank Tommy. And I do want to do a plug for Mainline Marlins. You can find it on where podcasts are shown everywhere. All right. And they're ranked. I'm sorry about the Marlins, Tommy. All right. It'll get better though. Folks, again, thanks for joining us. Appreciate your time and have a great day.